Hey everybody, this is Dave from Verified News, freedomwatch.us channel, and been working on this video for a few days actually, trying to figure out how I was going to explain what's going on inside the CAFR reports. You know, that's the Consolidated Annual Financial Reports for the states. And I'm just looking at one state. My mom lives there, so I wanted to tell her about what her government is doing. And my mom hates me because I'm bursting her bubble. She doesn't hate me. We talk a lot, a few times a week. I sell her cookbooks online, so we have the opportunity to talk quite often, and that's a good thing. So I'm looking in the Oklahoma CAFR reports, and I've looked into other reports, and they're all very similar. So this is going to be the same for your state, any state. First of all, let's look at the government, and the government has this structure. They're your trustee, okay, investment manager, all the things that it says the government is on the charts here. Now, I did these charts up, and this is really going to be hard. This is really hard to explain, but I've done my best. I'm just going to talk about it, and then the chart slide will be there for you to see kind of independently, because it's going to be hard to explain. So I'm just going to talk about it, and you'll have the slides up there to refer to, maybe not in order of what I'm talking about. So sorry if that is not coordinated that well. Let's start off with the government structure. The government is your guardian. You are its ward. You're a ward of the state. That's what the law sees you as. Okay? And I know that's kind of insulting, but it's true, and I've proved it in the law. You're a ward of the state. Your power of attorney has been transferred to the state. Okay? Now, what the state is actually acting as is your investment manager. In other words, they're like a fund that you invest in, but investing in this fund means you give up all your rights and have to obey the fund manager, which is the government. And the government is all those things listed in the box and more. Okay? So the government has two ways to raise revenues. It can sell bonds that you're liable for to pay back, and it can collect taxes that it's not liable to pay you back. Okay? Now, these two sources of revenue are supposed to fund the government, but they almost always produce a surplus. And regardless of what these governments are saying about being broke, Oklahoma has a $6 billion surplus. Okay? And it's what they're doing with these surpluses and the assets and your payments that I'm going to talk about. So, you see how we, because the government can raise taxes, it can charge you taxes, and it can borrow as much money as it needs, and it does that to a level where it creates a surplus over its needs. All right. Now, a lot of your tax money is invested in agency funds. That's not a surplus. That has to be allocated to them. But those funds are fraudulent too. I'll tell you why. So you have all these funds: fireman fund, ecology fund, this fund, hospital fund, this fund, that fund, and the other fund, retirement funds, this and that and the other thing that the government has obligated itself to collect and to maintain. Billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars just sitting in government accounts. But it's allocated. Now, the reason it's allocated is so that those funds can, in those agency funds, can invest in mutual funds, and they're required to do so that hold U.S. government bonds. U.S. government bond funds, municipal bonds, state bonds, county bonds, federal bonds, treasury bonds, you name it. They have to invest their money into funds, government bond funds. Now, these are privately run funds, and they just buy bonds, and you can buy into the fund if you want. Okay? Now, the problem with this is that those funds are full of bonds that are your debt and you owe interest on. And they're investing the state funds into those funds and charging you interest on your own money. They're converting your assets into debt. Now what happens to the surplus? Surplus is immediately invested into, you got it, mutual funds holding U.S. government security interest-bearing bonds. So all of your surplus is immediately converted into a debt that you have to pay interest on to the government. You see how this works? So your assets are being converted one for one. Every single dollar you pay, every single dollar the government borrows in your name is being converted into a liability against you. Now the dollars that are borrowed, of course that's a liability, but your tax money shouldn't be used against you, and it is. Your tax money that creates the surplus is being used to invest in your debt to charge you interest. So what happens is that the state always has more interest in your debt than it has liabilities to your debt. In other words, because they have two streams of revenue, taxes and the ability to sell bonds and raise debt, they always borrow less than they actually get. And what's the difference in it? That's all invested into your debt. Not by buying the bonds back, which would actually destroy the debt and eliminate it and reduce your liability. They go through an investment fund that buys your bonds, and they buy them as interest holders in your debt. And there's a big difference. In other words, Oklahoma State bonds float on the open market. They could just go on the open market and buy them back. Once you hold your bond, the debt is no longer valid. You can rip it up, and that debt's destroyed, and it's no longer a liability on the people. Okay? If, on the other hand, you invest and buy U.S. government bonds, you're converting the asset of the people into a liability payable to you. And remember, the government is a corporation. It's a separate entity. It doesn't represent you. You've contracted with it. You've applied for permission and begged to be a member of society by becoming a citizen. You've begged to be able to drive your car. You've begged to be able to own your car, registration and license. You submit to all of its demands, and it's working against you. Well, your government is working against you at all levels. They're doing their very best to disenfranchise and put you into debt so deeply you'll never get out. Ever. And that's the whole idea. And the government, I don't know what they are. I know they're corporations. I don't know what they're doing. I think they're just taking the money and running. Using this Ponzi scheme to generate huge fucking assets that are benefits of government agencies and government officers and cost you money. So anyway, that's what they're doing. Rather than, let's just call it the surplus, rather than eliminating debt with that surplus, they're investing in your debt and creating more debt with it. So your surplus is being used against you. It's being converted into a liability. As soon as it's created, that surplus goes right into bonds that you have to pay interest on. So the government's buying you up with your own money. It's called conversion, and that's exactly what's going on in the CAFR reports. You read those CAFR reports, and you find out what those funds are invested in. You don't have to read the numbers, just read what it says. These will be invested in interest-bearing government securities. That's what it says. That's what they have to be invested in. It's right there in black and white. But this is so convoluted, and the extra interest they get from having more interest in your debt than liability for your debt. See, your debt's out there, and they just buy it up as holders of the debt, not as redeemers of the debt. I have to tell you right now, that's fraudulent. This is fraudulent management of your money. And if a mutual fund were to do this kind of crap, you'd have a pretty good lawsuit. And I think everybody in the country has a pretty good lawsuit right now. The odds of enough people getting this message or figuring it out or even bothering to open up a CAFR report and look at it for themselves, the odds are against it. And that's one of the reasons I've been having trouble putting up this video, because it was a lot of work to make all these slides and to try to present it in a way where you would understand it. Now, there's an imbalance. There's an imbalance between what the government has, they sell bonds, but they buy more bonds. So they're always collecting more interest than they're paying, and that extra interest arbitrage goes straight right back into government-backed securities, your debt. It's just a huge reverse fractionalization. It's like looking into a mirror from a mirror and seeing the reflection, and every reflection is a cycle of this money going in and enriching the government and impoverishing you. Now, I'm not full, I'm just one guy, man. I can't put together a unified economic theory that's going to cover every detail and every avenue and every alley and every liability and every direction of implication. I can't do that. I'm just one guy, and I'm trying to give you what I can. But I would really like to see, and I have seen it before, when a popular channel picks up one of my ideas and runs with it. I don't need credit. Nobody has to give me credit. The credit is when I see my ideas start to flourish out there. And a few of my ideas from this channel over the past 3 years have done that. And I don't know if I'm responsible, but I know I contributed. So I'm contributing this here. And that's all there in the charts, and I've just explained it to you. You're taking your surpluses, investing it in your debt, and converting those surpluses into a liability against you, and collecting the interest on it. So, that's what your government is doing. I mean, why aren't you out in the streets protesting this too? I'm hoping to get more people out there in the streets with some different kinds of signs, because people just don't have any comprehension of economics. And I know it's not your fault. They don't teach it in school. It's a very basic, easy subject. It's all addition and subtraction, asset, liability. It's all you have to know. And you look in these reports and look a little bit, and you see all the surpluses. You see how they're taking all your money and stuffing them in both agency funds, which then invest in government debt, your debt, and collect the interest. What right do they have to stack billions and billions of dollars in cash in bank accounts and private mutual funds, and then come to you and say they're broke? That was effing broke, by the way. Oh, we can't meet our budgets. We'd have to liquidate one of our funds. And you know what? I believe that all these retirements, all this stuff, they shouldn't have your taxpayer money stashed away in funds, creating interest to fund those liabilities. They should liquidate those funds, either give the money back to us, put it into infrastructure, do something that would employ people, and tax the results and pay as you go. But that wouldn't allow them to do what they're doing. And if this convoluted thing is designed to enrich people, not you. I don't know who yet. Like I said, I don't have all the pictures. I don't have all the liability chains. I don't know. I know that they get fat salaries and they have fat retirements, and that the mutual funds get their fees, and the banks are happy, and I don't know exactly what they're trying to do here. I think they're just trying to put you in debt so you don't own anything, and then they can just sign it all over to the Fed or whatever. Point is it's crooked and it's fraudulent. So anyway, this is Dave with my report on CAFR fund investments, CAFR Consolidated Annual Financial Report, agency fund investments and surplus investments, how they treat your tax money. Face it, you give them money, and then they take that money and they use it against you directly by converting your surplus asset, into a liability and making you pay for it. It's just like Bank of America charging you $5 to borrow your money. Hey, put your account in our bank so we can borrow some money from you. Oh, but you have to pay us to borrow that money. We're not gonna let you give us money for free. You have to pay us to give us that money. I'm hoping this channel will get viral, so I'm gonna restrain myself in my language, but just use your imagination, okay? So this is Dave from Verified News, the freedomwatch.us channel, checking out. Be sure to thumb it up if you liked it, thumb it down if you didn't. If you want to thank me, click on an ad. I get revenues when you click on those ads. Best way to thank me, by the way, is to click on the ad. If you have a question, put it in the comment section. I'd be glad to answer you. I like friends, and subscribers are always good too. And that's it. Click on the ad to support the channel. This is Dave, once again, from Verified News, checking out. Have a good day.